Hello and welcome to this course introduction lecture in this data processing course where we'll go into Python, we'll go into pandas for data processing and visualization with Matplotlib, Plotly, etc. So a lot of fun will be waiting for you. In this lecture, I will go into the introduction to why you should learn Python and some motivation behind it. So moving on to the slides here, we have learning Python will open up the doors to many fields. So Python is very useful and we'll see why. So let's go into the next slide here. We have Python. So what is Python? So it's a high-level programming language. So high level means that there's a lot of abstractions that make it easy for you to work with Python. So it's quite readable syntax. While lower language such as C, you have more fine-grained control over what will happen. But in Python, there's more abstractions, which will make it much simpler for you to learn. So it's simple, it has a readable syntax, it's widely used. And there's some key features of Python, which it is open source, which means it's free for you to use. And it is dynamic typing. So in a lot of other languages that are hard typed or statically typed, you need to provide what the type is. For example, when you're creating variable, you do int number, for example, while in Python, the type is inferred in runtime. So it's dynamical typing. So you don't need to write explicitly which type it is. It has a vast library ecosystem. So it means that we have a lot of libraries that can help you in your development. Most of the tasks that you will be working with, there might be some library existing that might solve it. And if it doesn't and you need to customize a lot, you can build your libraries based on other libraries. And also you can open source it if you want, or you may to choose it closed source. That is up to you. Python is OOP, object-oriented programming, and functional programming, so you can pick it both ways. So basically all of Python in its core, it is based on objects. So everything in Python is an object. So even a class is an object. But with that, you don't need to explicitly use classes in order to program with Python. However, that is a good way to structure up your code. There's a lot of different applications of Python. For example, you can apply it for data analysis. And you can use it for machine learning and AI. And this has been exploding in the recent decade, I would say. But actually, it has been around for a very long time, and Python is the main tool to use for machine learning and AI. We have automation, so Python can be used for automating a lot of things. So you can think of all the things that are boring, where you click a lot. Those can be automated using Python. There's something called RPA, Robotic Process Automation, which is quite good when you want to decrease all the boring, repetitive tasks that you are dealing with. Web scraping, another application where you need to get some data from the web. So you scrape it and use it for different applications. For example, to create a dashboard for monitoring something, you could do that with web scraping. And web development, so Python has some libraries for developing for the web, and which are quite useful. However, when it comes to web development, you could use Python as one part and you could connect it to JavaScript frontends, for example. And there's also Python for frontend as well. But when it comes to career, then we have data scientists. They work in the data field, so a lot within data analysis, machine learning, AI, and this is data science. And then we have data engineers. They are also working a lot with the data and building different type of pipelines to serve data scientists and business intelligence, etc. There's DevOps engineer, which is another role where you're working with development and operations, so making everything flow well for the other engineers in your team. There's, of course, web developer as well, where Python is very much needed. So when we're learning about Python, there's a lot of ways to begin. So you don't really know exactly where, but I have listed out, I made a roadmap here, so which you can use as a point of starting point. And you don't need to follow it exactly, but this is something that I would suggest for learning Python and data processing. So in this course, we will cover most of the parts, but some of the parts we'll leave for later courses, and some of the parts which are more details will also be left for later courses. So Git and GitHub to version control code. So it's very important to version control code. No matter what the programming language you're working with, you need to know Git and GitHub. This is a good starting point. And then in virtual environment is very important. So you need to be able to isolate packages. I would suggest that you learn this from start so that you don't work with the global Python environment, because that will lead to problems later on. And it's just better to start learning this correctly from the beginning. So in this course, we'll use something called UV. It's a package manager created using Rust, but you could use another one, for example, Python's built-in venv or Poetry or pipenv or Conda, depending on what you want. But we will use the UV. So then we'll go into fundamental Python. So here we'll work with the syntax, variables, data types, if, while, for. And then we'll go into more in data structures. So list, tuple, set, dictionary, comprehension, and comprehensions. And we won't cover all of this in this course, but these are good to know. So we'll cover some of them. We'll handle text. That is also important. So you need to be able to work with string, regular expression, and file handling. So reading and writing to files is very important. Error handling is important so that you can handle different error types. There's, for example, logical error, what is that? There's a syntax error, what is that, etc. And then try except, what is this? And raise is also important. And then we'll reuse code using functions and also Lambda functions. They're anonymous functions, which might not exist in many other languages, but some do have Lambda functions. And they are very good to use, as in Python you can create higher order functions. So functions can take input another function. And we have computations. That is an important part in Python, especially when you're working with data processing. There's NumPy. And there's vectorization, and actually it's thanks to NumPy that we can actually use Python to do a huge amount of computations. Because one common myth is that Python is quite slow language, and that is true if you use the built-in Python. It is quite slow if you just, for example, loop through a list, because there's a lot of overheads. However, when you're using NumPy arrays and you use vectorization, then you're not looping, and then this is really fast. Then we will need to know about visualization. When we have data, we need to visualize it, and also important is that you have concept called data storytelling, so that you can tell a story with your data. So not just visualizing everything. So there's something called EDA, exploratory data analysis, which we'll come into. Also, there's something called explanatory data analysis. So there's a difference there, which is important to know. We'll get into object-oriented programming, and here this is where we'll get into more about how to structure, so advanced structuring of your code, and more for reusing, and don't repeat yourself, and use different code. You create different code once and you can reuse it in several places. So here we'll work with class, attributes, methods, properties, decorators, polymorphism, data class, encapsulation, inheritance, and actually many more concepts, but I can't write it out here. But in this course, we won't go into details of all the object-oriented programming. However, some simpler parts will be covered. But this is also when if you want to learn Python deeply, you can have this as reference. So then afterwards we come into fundamental pandas, where we'll go into series, data frame, selection, sort. We'll also get into handling. I'll remove myself here so that I don't cover the screen. We'll come into missing data and other important parts with. And yeah, as I've said before, exploratory data analysis, so statistics, some missing data, KPIs, seaborn, and plot. And then we need to aggregate data, we merge the data, we join the data, and we apply functions to the data. And finally, we'll go into dashboard, Streamlit, or Dash. There's a lot of other dashboards applications as well, or libraries. However, these are my favorites, or at least I really enjoy Dash. Streamlit I use for simplicity, and I usually teach Streamlit because of the simplicity. In Dash, you need to learn HTML and CSS as well. But yes, Streamlit is quite easy, but we won't go into Streamlit in this course. We will leave it for the next course, yes, or one of the next courses. Yes, and with this, I would like to thank you for watching this video on the introduction to this course. So thank you, see you in the next video. Bye.